they denied the authenticity of the documents. But that didn't last long. They were so obviously authentic. I played one against the other. We had certain other statements made earlier from different people. I would say, would you say that your colleague over there, Sturmbannführer, is always a big liar? No, 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 he's not a liar. He's an honest man. Well, this is what he said. You say the opposite. Which one of you is the liar? And it didn't last long. Pretty soon it was clear. And they explained. And the best explanation I got, because someone asked me to explain the mentality of the mass murderers, and it's important for you to know that, because they came from here, and they're just like you and me, people elsewhere. And the most outspoken defendant, who I think spoke the truth, was Otto Ohlendorf, Dr. Otto Ohlendorf. He may have some children in the audience here, for all I know. He had 5 children. Brigadeführer in the SS, commander of Einsatzgruppen-Trial, and his report said that they had succeeded in eliminating 90,000 Jews, and others included. And Ohlendorf, you were the commander of this unit? Yeah, well, is it true that this unit executed 90,000 innocent people? No, I don't know, I can't answer that. Why not? Well, you know, sometimes they bragged about the body count. They increased the number. They hadn't really killed 90,000, they killed some less. Good example of finding out whether they're acting under superior orders or whether they're bragging to show what a good job they're doing. See what you say, they 70,000, 80,000? That could be. Okay, let's let it go at that. And how were they shot? Well, he said, and I'm spelling this out for you a bit. He said, I was much more considerate than my other commanders. Many of them just took the babies and they hit their heads against a tree and saved ammunition that way. And I didn't think that was a good idea at all. I didn't let my men do that. And I told them, when you see a mother who is hugging her baby to her chest, don't shoot for the mother and then the child. Aim for the child. And then the bullet will kill the infant and the mother. She'll stop screaming, and you'll save ammunition. And it's a much better way to do it. So he wanted credit for being a humanitarian, which compared to the others, he was. When he was sentenced to death, I went down to the death house, the only such case I had. I never talked to my defendants, never. I didn't want to talk to them. I had records, let them do the talking. I will cross-examine them, that's all. And I went down to the death house in Nuremberg to talk to him. He was a dead man for sure. And I said, is there anything I can do for you, Herr Ohlendorf? And what I had in mind is, you know, tell my wife, my children, I love them. He didn't say that. He said, you'll see I was right. And my biggest disappointment in Germany, knowing the mass murderers, I never heard a sign or a word of remorse, no regret. Nobody said, I'm sorry. Nobody. They were all convicted on their own evidence. 13 of them were sentenced to death by a devout Catholic chief judge. 4 of them were actually executed, and then in the course of various clemency actions, which were not a review of the Nuremberg proceedings, but rather considerations based upon family, based upon disparity in different sentences, and so on. 4 of them were actually hanged in Landsberg. Was there justice? Someone said, who is guilty? Was Ohlendorf any worse than anybody else? Probably not. He probably was better than some. Some of them were just sadistic. He was killed for the fun of it. Okay. I don't want to dwell on the atrocities of war. In Berlin, you have seen them. This is a young crowd, haven't seen them. I first saw the atrocity when I came into Berlin right after the war looking for Hitler. And I went into the bunker, which was not yet flooded, became flooded shortly thereafter. But the ruins of Berlin, the rapes taking place in Berlin by the Russian soldiers, I was very familiar with all of that. And it did not fill me with joy and say, aha, now I'm teaching them a lesson. It filled me with sadness. Because as I opened up the Einsatzgruppen-Trial, I began with the opening sentence, it is with sadness and with hope that we here disclose these terrible crimes. And I asked the court to affirm by international criminal law the right of all people to live in peace and dignity regardless of their race or creed. Because these people were all murdered because they didn't share the race or the ideology of their executioners. And these were intelligent people, high-ranking people. Could happen elsewhere too. And I think it was a terrible thing. And I still think it's a terrible thing, perhaps so terrible that I can't stop working. However, let me move on to the next phase because the time is running out and I have Herr Sadhoff here. I've got to talk about the next phase. Next phase, after you have taken care of winning the war, which I did with some help from Patton, and taking care of some of the criminals, a small sampling. What about the victims? Mustn't forget the victims. They are usually forgotten. They become a statistic. What has happened to the 25 million people who were killed in World War I and the 50 million who were killed in World War II? People forgot about them. I said, no, that's the wrong thing to do. And without going into the details, I became the Director General of the Jewish Restitution Successor Organization to recover the heirless property and the unclaimed property of the Jews who had been killed. Now, in order that you shouldn't be carried away too much by that title of Director General, I want you to know that I gave myself that title because I thought the Germans would be very impressed with such a title. In fact, I was the organization. And the organizations were not prepared to put any money into this thing because it looked such a hopeless endeavor. Well, that went on. We claimed the property. At that time, I was hired in August 1948, long before most of you were born. And we began to recover the property taken from Jews who had not claimed or had disappeared. Well, it soon became obvious we have to do more than that, just to give back property. There are two enormous problems. Herr Cohen had sold his property to Herr Schmidt, Aryanized it, but in the meanwhile, the British Army had come by and knocked the roof off the house. And he had to put in a new boiler and a new roof, and who's going to pay for that? He said, well, I didn't do it. Well, somebody else got to pay. And what about the currency? You got Reichsmarks, and now you want to give me back Deutschmarks 10-1? Tremendous problems of getting back the property, generating anti-Semitism in Germany. So I invented a cure for that, long before the Stiftung was ever heard of or dreamt of. And that was to assign the properties to the German state, to the Länder. And the first was Hesse. Had a meeting, and I said, look, we have all these claims. The reason we have the claims and not you is because it would be immoral to allow the state to benefit from their own crime by keeping the property of the people who had been murdered. Normally, if a person dies without heirs, property goes to the state. But where the state is responsible for the murder, that's a terrible conclusion. Your lawyers here. A cheat to the wrongdoer is not justice. So we set up this charitable organization to use the proceeds for the benefit of the survivors. Sounded like a perfectly good idea, but it was generating such hostility. And I said, no, I can't go on with this. It's taking a long time. Every difficult thing about the valuation, about the repairs, about the mortgage and all that. Give it to the state. I needed the money then because the Jews had to be gotten out of Germany. They were in DP camps. The army didn't want them there. General Clay said, Ben, get them out of here. The sooner the better. The Russians may come in tomorrow.